Okay, so we've got IP iron, heading 355, offset right. Distance is 3,800. Target elevation is 6 meters MSL. Target description, that's where you just say what it is. In this case, let's call it tank. Target location, where you give the grid. So we're just going to give a 6-digit grid because Chernarus is weird. And we'll call this Grisby. You want to give me the 6-digit grid for that target?
Sure. 073119.
Okay. That's close. I would have put it 072, but it's pretty much halfway between, so that's good enough. Actually, that's probably better since it's closer to 073. Everybody knows that the grids are on the lines, not in the squares, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Some people think the grid is right in the middle of the square, but it's technically right on the line. So Grizz is correct by calling it 073. Okay. Type mark, those are the target marks we went over before, laser, etc. In this case, we'll say no mark. And obviously there's no laser code. In this case, you don't have to say laser code because it's not applicable. Location of friendlies. Let's say there are friendlies on in the town of Chernogorsk, and they're currently firing, or they're currently taking fire from the target location. Let me mark some friendlies here. Everybody see the mark FRI for friendlies?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So in this case, we're going to call this friendlies southwest. What is that? 700 meters?
Yeah, about bearing 222.
Okay, so we'll say location of friendlies is southwest 700. Troops in contact, or TIC. This lets the attacking aircraft know that troops are firing or taking fire from the target. If there are multiple targets, the attacking aircraft may prioritize the targets that are actively firing. Okay, and last, line 9 is egress. This is the egress direction that the aircraft should take. Sometimes you can leave this up to the pilot. Otherwise, this can be a general direction or a point. In this case, let's say we want the aircraft to go west and circle back around to IP iron. We're going to say egress west to IP iron. Or you could say west iron. And that's going to let them know as soon as they're off hot, they're going to pull off to the west and they're going to circle back around to IP iron. Okay, questions on what each of the 9 lines are?
Nope.
At the end of a 9 line, you will say when ready to copy remarks, and that just gives the aircraft a little extra time to finish, or the pilot a little extra time to finish writing down the 9 line, and there's a little break in between the 9 line and the remarks. Now, remarks are sort of the optional, use as appropriate additional information. In this section is where you're going to let the pilot know what ordnance to use, or you can say something like dealer's choice, which will let the pilot choose based on the target, or you don't actually have to say any ordnance and they'll use what they see as a best fit. Final attack heading is usually in remarks and is usually given as a range of 20 to 40 degrees. So in this case, say we want them to come in from the offset right, like we said, we could give them a range of degrees. So say 320 to 340. And when you say that, you just say final attack heading 320340, and they'll know, okay, I should be somewhere between those two bearings when I'm approaching the target. And that'll give them extra clarification. If you skip lines 1, 2, and 3 and give them a final attack heading, that's also pretty helpful, especially when there's a laser involved. If there's a laser involved, you're going to want to say the laser target line, which, if you have your laser designator out, is just the bearing readout in the top. And that lets the pilot know where the laser's coming from. Part of the reason for that is if you don't give a final attack heading, the pilot needs to know from which direction they can acquire the laser, because you can't come in the opposite direction as a laser and expect the bomb to acquire it. Okay, and lastly in the remarks is any nearby air threats. If you've got guys on the ground with AA launchers, you could say something like man pads, which would be man portable air defenses. You have Zeus 23s, SAMs, whatever air defenses are in the area, you would say under the threats thing. For any of the remarks, if they don't exist, don't say them. If there are no threats, you don't have to say no threats. Actually, that one's kind of a nice one to say. But if there's no laser target line, don't say it. If there's no final attack heading, don't say it. If there's no preference on ordnance, don't say it. If there are no remarks, all you're going to say is no remarks. Okay, so that's a 9-line. Once the 9-line is over, yeah, we'll talk about this now. If you're looking at my quick reference sheet, you'll see on the first page the comms order for Type 1 and Type 2 controls. Type 3 is a little more lenient, but for Type 1 and Type 2, once the 9-line is over and the remarks are over, the attacking aircraft is going to read back lines 6, 8, and the final attack heading. If they read back correct, you're going to say read back correct. If it's not correct, you're going to say corrections, and then you'll clarify with them what they got wrong. You don't have to do the whole 9-line again because that'll be pretty slow.
Yep.
Once you say that, you can say advise when IP inbound. On mine thing, it says cleared IP inbound. That also means advise when IP inbound. It's common courtesy to let the forward air controller know when you're inbound on the target. Most of the time that's required as well. Sometimes it's not required, but cleared IP inbound is fine. Aircraft is going to say IP inbound when they get to the IP and they're set up to roll in on the target. This is not, you don't say IP inbound right before weapons release, because at this point the aircraft is not cleared to release weapons. At this point the aircraft is still setting everything up, and they're going to say IP inbound. And at that point, when they say IP inbound, if you need time to mark or get people ready, that's the point where you say, okay, the aircraft's coming in. If you're marking with smoke or something like that, IR strobe, that's when you throw it and you let the aircraft know mark is on the deck. If you're marking with a laser, sometimes people will say sparkle, or an IR pointer, say sparkle. Then the aircraft will be rolling in on the target. As soon as they see the mark, they're going to say contact the mark. Or if they see the target, they'll say contact tank in this case. Since there's no target, they're going to say contact tank. Once you know that they have the correct target, that's when you're going to say cleared hot. I was told by one of our other members that he's a C-130 operator, so a little bit different interactions with JTAC than normal attack aircraft. But usually when a JTAC says cleared hot, you say it with some enthusiasm to let the attacking aircraft really know that it's time to, drop the ordnance, pickle the bomb, rifle the missile, get the guns on target, etc. Then the aircraft is going to say, if they release ordnance, they'll say off hot. If they don't release ordnance, they'll say off cold. At that point, you need, if they don't destroy the target or they're off cold, you need to clear them back in for reattack. They will not do it on their own unless you say to them, like, cleared reattack until the target's destroyed. But usually you need to clear them to reattack every single time. If they hit the target, you'll say target destroyed, fire mission complete. Good job. Always thank the pilot. If they destroy part of the target, say it's a tank and infantry, you could say, one tank destroyed, cleared reattack, or 2 units destroyed, cleared reattack, etc. And keep that going until everything's dead. When they come in for the reattack, they're going to start at the IP inbound phase, and you need to do that whole phase again where, you tell them continue. If you need to mark, you say that mark is on the deck. If you need to remark, do that. They'll contact the target, and you clear them hot. If you want to skip the contact phase, if you want to skip any of this, and you're confident that the aircraft knows what it's doing, as soon as you say cleared hot, it's basically on them to continue the fire mission. They don't need to check in with you after that. If you want to keep control, don't say cleared hot until you actually are clearing them hot. As soon as you say cleared hot, it's in their hands, and they're going to deploy those munitions based on whatever you gave them. Once that's over, fire mission is complete, and you've delivered the BDA or battle damage assessment. That's where you tell them, what's destroyed and whatnot. Then you can have them stand by for another fire mission or check out. Up to you.
Moose, is it also worth pointing out that once the JTAC has cleared the aircraft hot, the aircraft will call either off hot or off cold if it's a bomb or missile release?
Yeah, I believe I said that. If they maybe I need to clarify. If the attacking aircraft releases ordnance and comes outbound off the target, they will say off hot. If they don't release anything, they will say off cold. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. That's basically it. For Type 3, since it's less restrictive, you can basically give them some, a little less data than previously. If you're confident, as soon as you're confident they can hit the target, you just say cleared hot and step off the comms and let them do their thing. You can clear them hot as soon as they read back correctly in a Type 3, because then it's on them to acquire the target and get inbound based on the information you gave them. They might still tell you IP inbound, and you can still tell them continue. But once they're cleared hot, they're cleared hot. Go ahead, Recon.
Just want to clarify one thing. So the off hot, off cold is when it's a missile or a bomb, and then what if it's a gun run? Then they say attack complete?
Any sort of weapons deployment at all is off hot. Hot just means they fired something, they're trying to kill somebody. Cold means they didn't see the target, or they didn't release the weapons, they didn't fire the guns. Cold means no weapons were deployed.
Okay, because on your 9-line sheet, there's also attack complete. It says, or attack complete.
Yeah, that's possible too. I forgot about that. Yeah, they could say attack complete as well, and they'll usually say that's usually the same as off hot. That's usually if they are 100% confident that their weapons are going to hit the target, and if their weapons don't hit the target, that's highly unexpected. For instance, with AGMs, you could say attack complete once the AGMs have been launched, and eventually they'll come inbound and hit the target. And it would be extremely rare in that case for them to have missed the target. So attack complete is the same thing, just with a little bit more confidence.
Yeah, yeah.
So now that we've
Go.
done 9 lines, Moose, are you going to talk about what Triptych taught us about game plans?
Yeah. First, let's look at the 5 lines.
Okay.
Does everybody have a 5-line sheet in front of them? Or does anybody not have a 5-line sheet in front of them?
Pen and paper.
Okay. So 5 lines basically go like this. Line 1 is the warning order. That's where you say, you know, hog 2-1, this is eyeball, fire mission, over. Works a little different than 9 lines. So that's line 1. Line 2 is the friendly location. My position, blank, marked by blank, over. Line 3 is target location, and you're going to give a grid. Line 4 is target description and mark, blank, marked by blank, over. And line 5 is any remarks. Much simpler than a 9-line, much quicker. And that's because, again, this is usually a type 3 control. If you need a more restrictive control, you need to say that in the remarks for a 5-line. That's where you're going to say, something like at my command or request talk on, things like that. I'll talk about a talk on in a sec. Helicopter gunship CAS is much less restrictive, like I said, because the gunner in the gunship has AT FLIR. They can usually see the battlefield better than you can. So they're going to have a bigger picture of what's going on. If you need to be really restrictive, then they'll call, you say at my command, and they'll call in their targets to you, tell you what they see, or you can request talk on, and you can do it that way. Yeah. That's basically it for 5 lines. Those are much simpler. Any questions on those?
Negative.
Yeah, let's say you are designating a target with a IR laser. In the remarks, could you get them to confirm when they have the target so
Yep.
that you can maybe duck behind cover or something?
Yep. If you're marking with an IR pointer, one of the things you're going to want to clarify, if you say laser, that usually means a laser designator. If you say pointer, that's going to be the laser on the side of your gun, and you're not going to expect a weapons lock on it. So in that case, you'll say marked by IR pointer, and if you say at my command, they're going to know that means you want some more control, and they need to check in with you when they see the target. Okay. Let me think. We've got talk on. We've got Hobo. What was the other thing you mentioned?
Game plans. What Triptych taught
Talk
us?
on and game plans. And then we'll get some practice in here. Okay, so talk on is even more control, especially if you don't have things like a grid reference and you have more of things like map references. Talk on procedure basically goes like this. So we'll do it with Hobo real quick. Say we're going to attack that barn over there, but I don't have anything to mark it with. I'm going to say to Caspian 1, request talk on, and then when we're done with the remarks and the reback and everything, and he's IP inbound, I'm going to say, advise when ready for talk on, and he'll say ready for talk on. And I will say, we've got a large airfield here with 2 hangars. Say when you contact the hangars. And Hobo will look for the hangars. When he sees them, he'll say contact hangars. I'll say, okay, if you look west of the hangars, there's a control tower. Send contact. He'll say contact the control tower. I say, okay, now look southwest of the control tower. There's a town and there's a tree line right before a town. Send contact on the tree line. He'll say contact the tree line. Then I'll say, okay, right at the edge of the tree line in the town, there's a barn. Send contact on the barn. He'll say contact the barn. I say that is your target. The barn is your target. And he'll confirm copy the barn as the target. And from there, that's essentially how a talk-on works. It's usually a less formal way of saying, okay, here are your landmarks. Here's how I'm sort of walking you into the target, starting with something big like the airfield or a river, and then getting smaller and smaller until you can point out the target. Talk-ons make sense?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. And lastly, game plans. If you have the luxury of briefing with your air support team, you can establish what's called a game plan. And I have that on my reference sheet. You can give your game plan a title like Alpha. What a game plan is a predefined fire mission where you leave some things blank. For instance, you might leave the target description, location, and final attack heading blank. And everything else is already filled in. You have the IP, you have sort of the distance, the heading and distance to the AO. You sort of know what you're looking for. You already know you're going to mark by laser. You already know the location of the friendlies. They're going to be, at waypoint, somewhere between waypoint 1 and waypoint 6. And you already know you're going to egress a certain direction. You can establish that pre-mission with the air crew, so that all you have to say is, and you can also establish control type there. So all you have to say is Caspian 1 eyeball game plan alpha, and Caspian 1 will come back and say copy eyeball game plan alpha, ready to copy, and eyeball will say Caspian 1 game plan alpha, target description, 2 tanks, target location, grid, blah, blah, blah. Final attack heading 240. And that's a much quicker way to get everything done. You don't have to separate the 9 lines from the remarks. And that way you can reuse game plans. And it's just a quick way of getting casts in there, especially emergency casts. You can really define any part. You can say, we're going to use laser guided bombs. We're going to use guns. That's what a game plan is for. Those can be really helpful, but don't be afraid to just write up a new 9-line.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So, any questions on that before we start doing some practice?
I've just got one thing to say.
Sure.
So now that you all pretty much know how JTAC works, next to the medic, you're probably the second most important guy in the squad because you command an immense amount of firepower and your actions and callouts can get a lot of people killed very quickly. So with great power comes great responsibility. So treat your new powers wisely and they will reward you greatly.
All right.